What's good, YouTube? It's your boy, Blue Blood Sports TV, back at y'all with another one. So, we have some very, very interesting news as it comes to undefeated three-division world champion, former junior welterweight undisputed world champion, currently the WBO welterweight world champion, who is widely considered by many to be the #1 pound-for-pound best fighter in the world, Terence Crawford. 37 wins, no losses, no draws, 28 big wins by way of knockout. He is 34 years of age, stands at 5'8" with a 74-inch arm reach. With that said, Terence Crawford is going into what is being considered the biggest fight of his career as he takes on two-time welterweight world champion superstar boxer Showtime Shawn Porter. 31 wins, 3 losses, 2 draws, 17 wins by way of knockout. He too is 34 years of age, stands at 5'7" with a 69-inch arm reach. That's scheduled to go to take place this upcoming Saturday, Las Vegas, Nevada, Mandalay Bay Arena. With that said, Terence Crawford has a very interesting take when it comes to how he's viewed. And Terence Crawford, he weighed in on now 4-division world champion Mexican superstar boxer who is currently the undisputed super middleweight world champion and widely viewed as top #1 pound-for-pound best boxer in the world, depending upon who you ask, in Saul Canelo Alvarez, who created history 2 weekends ago, becoming the first undisputed super middleweight in the history of sport of boxing, and he became the first Mexican-born fighter to become undisputed, hold all 4 major sanction belts in the history of sport of boxing, that being Saul Canelo Alvarez. 57 wins, 1 loss, 2 draws, 39 big wins by way of knockout, 31 years of age, stands at 5'8" with a 70-inch arm reach. With that said, Terence Crawford, he states and compares himself to retired legendary Hall of Famer, iconic superstar boxer who's the former pound-for-pound king, former pay-per-view king, retired undefeated, the man known as Money, Floyd Money Mayweather Jr. He says that Floyd Mayweather just didn't get the respect that he deserves. And he says that in order for me to get the respect I deserve, I'm going to need to fight Canelo Alvarez. Not just the biggest fight in the sport of boxing that everybody considers between himself and fellow champion in the welterweight division, undefeated unified WBC IBF welterweight world champion superstar boxer Earl the True Spence Jr., who is widely considered by many to be top 3 best pound-for-pound fighters in the world. 27 wins, no losses, no draws. 21 big wins by way of knockout. He is 31 years of age, standing 5'9.5" with a 72-inch arm reach. Okay, that's widely considered to be the best fight and the biggest fight in the sport of boxing currently as it stands. That's the fight that everybody wants to see. And so Terence Crawford, he states that, that fight is not enough to garner him the respect he deserves for his legacy and in the future how he'll be perceived. He stated that he feels like he's going to need to fight and beat Canelo Alvarez in order to get that respect, okay? Now, one thing we have to say is that Floyd Mayweather, he fought Canelo Alvarez back in May of 2013, and he won every single round against Canelo Alvarez. Wasn't even a close fight. He took Canelo Alvarez to school with his style, his, reflexes, his slick boxing ability. And so with that said, Terence Crawford, his style, his slickness, his boxing ability, his power, is more than Floyd Mayweather is viewed as. But, he gets a lot of comparisons to Floyd Mayweather stylistically wise. Now, Terence Crawford is much different in style comparison, in my opinion, than Floyd Mayweather. Terence Crawford is a fighter that switches from orthodox to southpaw fluidly. Terence Crawford is a brawler. He likes to mix it up. Okay, Terence Crawford has power in both hands. He's defensively irresponsible at times, but he's very skilled, very technical, and has a lot of tools in the toolbox, okay? So with that said, Terence Crawford, they compare him because of the slickness, but that's about the size of it. Terence Crawford is 5'8" with a 74-inch arm reach, extremely long arms. Terence Crawford has power in both hands, and he switches from round to round. Floyd Mayweather did that occasionally, not as much as Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford has made it a staple of his game, okay? And so with that said, that's where the comparison ends. And so I do think when Canelo Alvarez is at 160, 154, Terence Crawford does have the style to compete and beat Canelo Alvarez, okay? But right now, Canelo Alvarez is fighting at 168, 175, and he's now moving up to cruiserweight. So right now, as it stands, he just simply is too big for Terence Crawford, okay? Now, Terence Crawford was asked about fighting Canelo Alvarez in the past, in which Terence Crawford, he stated that, he don't see himself fighting Canelo Alvarez because he's just simply too big, okay? And so with that said, I highly doubt to see Terence Crawford ever fight Canelo Alvarez because he's now going up to cruiserweight in May, and that's 190 pounds, and he has no plans, in my opinion, to come back down to 168 or 160. 160 is completely out the question, okay? He's going to garner too much muscle mass, too much size. He's just not going to be able to come back down to that weight. And so with that said, I could see him still, that being Canelo Alvarez, come down to light heavyweight, 175, compete in the light heavyweight division. But as far as 160 middleweight and super middleweight, that's in his rearview mirror. Now there is talks that Canelo Alvarez wants to face off against Gennady Triple G Golovkin, who's is a two-time middleweight world champion, former unified middleweight champion, a rival that they fought twice, and the first fight ended in a draw. Second fight saw Canelo Alvarez win the second fight, but he is a fighter that never fought above 160 or below 160. Triple G, that is. Gennady Triple G Golovkin. So Canelo Alvarez trainer Eddie Reynoso states that he would love to see Canelo Alvarez face off against Triple G in September. That's going to have to be at a catchweight. So with that said, Terence Crawford needs to, in my opinion, focus on the task at hand, Shawn Porter, and then focus on the Errol Spence fight, okay? There are plenty of legacy fights in and around Terence Crawford's weight class that can garner Terence Crawford the respect and the credibility that he wants to be acknowledged for, okay? Again, the Errol Spence fight is the biggest fight in boxing, okay? So he fights and beats Errol Spence. That's huge, okay? You have guys like Jerome Boots Ennis that's coming up. You have Virgil Ortiz Jr. that's coming up, okay? You also have fights with Keith Thurman, who only has one loss. Now, I don't know how he can get Keith Thurman to get in the ring, because Keith Thurman has been relatively inactive for the better part of 5 to 6 years, the last 5 to 6 years. Fighting once a year, taking time off. Keith Thurman is very inactive, okay? But that's still a big fight for Terence Crawford. Danny Garcia don't seem to be in the works. But if Terence Crawford was able to move up to junior middleweight, okay, 154-pound division, he could look to fight Jermell Charlo, okay, who's the two-time junior middleweight champion and is the unified junior middleweight champion currently as it stands. Terence Crawford is the WBO champion as well. Terence Crawford can mandate a fight and force his way into a fight with Jermell Charlo. Why? By moving up to 154 and not losing at welterweight. The WBO, World Boxing Organization, that's in the manner they operate. They will allow Terence Crawford to be immediately the mandatory challenger for Brian Castano. Now, Brian Castano is the WBO junior middleweight champion, but he has to fight against Tim Tszyu, the son of the legend Costa Tszyu, okay? But, Tim Tszyu has a fight coming up that he has to get past first as well, and then that's going to be the mandatory. Now, Brian Castano, he fought against Jermell Charlo in an undisputed match, but it ended in a draw, okay? They had a chance to create history and become the 6th undisputed champion in history of the sport of boxing, behind only Bernard Hopkins, Jermaine Taylor, Terence Crawford, Josh Taylor, and Alexander Usyk and Josh Taylor. But now Canelo Alvarez has beat them to that task, because that fight ended in a draw, and it doesn't seem like they're interested to make a immediate rematch. I don't understand why. So Terence Crawford, Canelo Alvarez is out of the picture, in my opinion, for Terence Crawford. But you got Jermell Charlo, who is in play. That if he can go to 154 and beat Jermell Charlo, and beat Brian Castano, become undisputed at junior middleweight, two-time, two-division undisputed middleweight undisputed champion in the history of the sport of boxing, that would speak volumes. Let's say he fought and beat Errol Spence, and then he moved up and beat Brian Castano and Jermell Charlo and became undisputed there. That would be enough for him to truly, truly cement his legacy. He's already currently a Hall of Famer as it stands because of his accomplishments. But if he truly, truly wants to cement his legacy, you follow that blueprint, don't, when people ask you about Errol Spence Jr., don't say that fight is in your rearview mirror. That's the biggest fight in the sport of boxing. You need that fight. Now, there's reports that Terence Crawford has, contacted the WBC, World Boxing Council, President Mauricio Suleiman, to be placed in a position to be the mandatory challenger for Errol Spence Jr. WBC title. Well, currently as it stands, his own mandatory for the WBO in Virgil Ortiz Jr., 18 wins, no loss, no draw, 18 wins by way of knockout. He is his mandatory for the WBO, and he's also Errol Spence's mandatory for the WBC, okay? And Sean Porter is number 2 in those ranking systems. So he has to focus on the task at hand. There is a path without Canelo Alvarez for him to create the legacy and acknowledgement he's looking for when he retires. So let's see how this unfolds and plays out. But that's all I got for y'all. Make sure you hit the like button. Drop a comment in the comment section. Let me know what y'all think. Y'all already know what it is. It's your boy Blue, Blue Blood Sports TV. Hate, like, comment, and subscribe. You haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button. Hit the like button. Hit the bell icon and get all the new notifications. Follow me on Instagram at Blue Blood Sports TV, all one word. Y'all already know what it is. Shout out to the entire LDBC. Shout out to New Media. Shout out to Black Media Row. Make sure you like and share the videos. That's all I got for y'all. Peace.
GARNER, you're watching Blue Blood Sports TV. Wow.